Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 in the series on building with stainless steel. In the last episode, we talked about just a beginner's kind of build on the velocity, and we made a spaced coil. So today, we're going to kind of step it up a notch, and we're going to go with something a little bit more complicated, but still, I think, easy for a beginner to do. We're going to do contact coils, and we're going to be using Vertebraid wire. This is 6 pieces of stainless steel, 30 gauge stainless steel, braided together. So this is what we're going to use to make our wire, and we're going to be putting it on the Griffin RTA. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do than our last video. The Griffin is a little bit harder to install on than the Velocity, but it's still very easy to install on for an RTA. And we're going to be doing contact coils, which require just a little bit more work. So let's go on and get started. It's going to be the same tools that we used last time. We need some tweezers. And we need something to wrap the coil on. I'm going to be doing 8 wraps. In this one, you need to be a little bit more careful. The wire's a little bit bent. I'm just going to cut that part out of there. Hopefully this should be enough for 8 wraps. When doing contact coils, you need to be more careful wrapping it than you were with the space coils. With the space, you kind of just wrapped it around there however, and it just kind of worked out. So with this one, the goal is to get the wraps as close together as you possibly can. So you need to be a little bit more careful. So I'm going to start it by pushing it right up against there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm pulling down really hard while I'm turning. Make sure I got the right number in there. Yep, I think that was 8. So as you can see, it's all together there. Let me get the focus. They're touching each other. Now, it's okay if it springs out just a little bit, but that's why I'm kind of holding the legs. If I let go, they spring apart just a little bit. That's okay. So let's go on and get this side installed, and we'll wrap the other coil. To be doing a Vertebraid or one of the wires that have a little bit larger diameter, you're going to need an RTA or an RDA that can accommodate that. So Griffin has 2mm post holes, so it can fit it no problem. So here I'm installing the coil essentially the same as the Velocity. I'm going to place it in there and just kind of hold it in place, and then I'm going to tighten it down. Get it nice and tight. Oh, wrong one. That's me paying attention, I guess. to get it straightened up, looking okay. Pulled up to the top there. Alright, I'm going to do one more double check that it's tightened down. The Griffin is a little harder to tighten down the screws properly than the Velocity. The Velocity is very easy. So it's very much important that when you move it, you're like we talked about in the first video, when you're moving these wires back and forth to remove them, that you're watching this coil and making sure it doesn't move. Sorry, I got juice on my fingers. So I'm just kind of wiggling it back and forth and looking for movement to make sure that we have a good contact. Not seeing any. So the jury's kind of still out on which gives the best flavor, space versus contact. I prefer my coils to be a little bit spaced, but obviously you can fit more wraps in there with a contact coil. And with something like the Vertebraid, the way that they're braided together, spaced versus contact really makes less of a difference because there's so many little channels and valleys for the juice to get into that it kind of just negates that entire argument. So that's why I chose to make this one contact, so I can get 8 wraps in there on the Griffin. It looks like it'll fit okay. Might be a little bit tight because I made it 3mm. Now I'll show you how you can check if it's too big. This thing is going to come off eventually. Okay, I'm just going to snip this. It's taking too long. Okay. So before I go any further, I'm going to check and see what the ohms looks like, how it's looking. And I also want to check to make sure that 3mm is going to fit on the Griffin with such a wide coil. It should, but we're going to make sure. Okay, let's see what we're looking at ohms-wise. You can tell I did a little bit of customizing on my DNA. Okay, 0.24. That sounds about right. Alright, so quick way that we can tell if it's too big, screw this on here. Check the ohms again. Alright, and we're good. If it was too big, not only would you be able to feel it touching up against the chimney when you're screwing it on, the ohms would drop way down because it's shorted out. So we're good to go on 3mm. I thought it would fit, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so now we're on to the next one. Grab some more wire. And my whole thing just unspooled there. Okay. Make this one exactly the same, as close as you can to each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You want to make sure that you're pulling down pretty hard as you're wrapping it, especially with thicker wire like this. It's a little bit firm and springy, and you just kind of have to put a little bit of muscle into it. All right, let's get this installed on the other side. Sorry about that noise. Okay. Tightening it down just like I did with the first one. Okay, nice and tight. Clean it up, line it up. And I want it to be even with the other side. So I'm pulling it up. Oh, accidentally pushed the fire button. Don't do that. Now I need to try and remove these wires. Kind of takes a while with the Vertebraid. It's 6 wires, so there we go. See if I can just snip this one. That's good enough. Not perfect, but I don't want to bore you to death with me wiggling it back and forth. Okay. Let's check the ohms. 0.12, so it's exactly half of what it was with the single coil in there, so that's perfect. Now I'm going to start burning it, and I'm going to be looking for hot spots. And there almost certainly will be some, because this is a contact coil, and it's the firing part is much more complicated than the space coil where it kind of just works. So you're going to have hot spots with contact coils. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. We'll see what it looks like. So as you can see, some parts are heating up before the others. Going to squeeze it just a little bit. I'm using metal tweezers instead of ceramic tweezers right now, so I cannot squeeze it while I'm firing it, which you would do with ceramic tweezers. But when it's really hot, it's okay. I'm squeezing with quite a bit of pressure. You can see I'm just kind of pulsing it to try and tell where those hot spots are. And now I'm brushing at it. looking all right. You always want the coil to heat from the middle and spread outwards. And you want to keep your eye out for any part that's glowing much brighter than the others. So I want to try and brush it while it's hot. Squeeze again. Obviously this would be faster with ceramic tweezers, but my pair broke, so you have to bear with me. Alright, that looks good. I think we're good to go. Move on to wicking. Now, I'm going to wick this exactly the same as I did in our Griffin wicking tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and skip through the wicking because you can just watch that process in the wicking tutorial. Alright guys, so we're back. Now I'm just finishing up. I've got it wicked. I'm just finishing up adding some juice, priming those wicks. Now I'm going to throw the top on there. Now I want to double check again that I don't have a short. Alright, looks okay. Make sure those juice holes are closed. And juice it up real quick. The great thing about the Griffin, it's super fast to fill up. Okay. And just like in the wicking tutorial, I'm going to take a couple breaths on it. Making sure it's not having a massive leak. I don't see anything. I primed the coils pretty well so they shouldn't bubble too much. Sorry about the focus. There we go. And that's it. There's a contact coil installed in an RTA, and let's see how it works. I'm going to crank it up to about 55. That's normally where I like to go, right around 50 and between 50 and 60. And let's see how it goes. Coils are a little wet. There we go, now it's starting up. Maybe even crank it up a little bit higher. Go 59. That flavor is crazy. That tastes so good. And the wick's not even broken in yet. Looks like it's wicking okay. One thing that you can do with a top fill kind of RTA like the Griffin, if you feel like your wick isn't wicking fast enough and you want it to wick faster and you don't feel like waiting, just unscrew this cap just a little bit and it's gonna cause it to wick. Now you need to be careful doing that though, because if you keep doing that, it'll flood. It kind of opens up the vacuum and forces juice in there. So I didn't need to do that, but if for whatever reason you feel like it's not wicking fast enough, you can do that instead of having to take it apart and re-wick it. But if you wick it the way that I do in the wicking tutorial, I don't think that you would need to do that. So I'll have one more quick hit on it. And that's episode 2. That's our contact coil. So in episode 3, we're going to be building something a little bit smaller. We're going to try building on a small dripper or using smaller wire. This was a big build, big contact build. So be sure to check out our next episode and leave a comment.